Mr. Gardner?
Thank you again for your attention on this subject and moving it forward. I have a couple of specific comments, and then, as I promised, I'll give you an example that might address the performance outcome issue that I was raising earlier. Overall, I think the specific strategies that are outlined by the staff are appropriate. They capture many of the things that have happened in the last 9 months, as Jonas was referring to, where people have projects that are ready to go. I would note that I think there's one critical strategy that is missing, and that is fish protection strategies. I think that needs to be explicitly called out. Maybe it could replace that science one, and I would agree with the chairman that science one is an overarching one that shouldn't be listed under a specific category. So I think there's work and attention needed to continue to advance efforts to improve fish protection with our current system.
Mr. Gardner, what does fish protection mean? It doesn't include habitat protection, or it does?
I think it's separate from the habitat.
This predation only?
I think it's separate from predation. I think it's looking at several people have mentioned to you the study of low-flow fish screens in the South Delta, physical, non-physical barriers, things like that I think fit into that category of fish protection strategies. That's how I would describe it. And to me, it is distinct from the habitat restoration strategy. I wanted to make a comment on the objectives which appeared at the last meeting. My side comment is it would be really helpful if the staff kind of carried forward those things like the objectives into, sort of an ongoing development of a strategy or a near-term strategy to include the principles and objectives that were discussed last time. But one comment on the objectives. I think it's important to note that one of the goals or objectives here is to build the state's implementation capacity, or not just the state, federal, and stakeholder implementation capacity.
Build the implementation capacity?
Implementation capacity.
Capacity of what? To implement what?
To implement projects. We have an amazing ability to do planning and environmental impact reviews and more plans. We have lost the capability of implementing projects. There just isn't. We just haven't been implementing projects, and it is a different mindset. It's a different set of capabilities, and I think building that capacity through these near-term actions is really important.
So suspend CEQA.
No.
Okay.
I'm not saying to.
What I don't understand. I honestly don't understand what you mean.
Actually building stuff.
Well, other than doing all of this, do you want us to just add a note? We really seriously mean you should build stuff, or as Governor Brown famously said in a slightly obscene comment.
Yeah. I'm suggesting that it is an objective of the near-term strategies is to build the capacity to implement, because we're going to be implementing bigger things in the future. And so that means, it may mean training people, it may mean bringing in people that know how to implement projects, that kind of thing.
Okay.
I would repeat my earlier comment on lacking an attention on performance management. I think the near-term strategies discussion should begin now to articulate how are we going to measure progress. And some of that performance may be on, I think, what you call administrative performance. So are we measuring, are we putting things on schedules, as Mr. Nordoff suggested, and are we measuring progress on that? And others may be outcome-oriented. But we need to start building that into the near-term strategies now. So lastly, let me kind of bring it back to the front. Mr. Chairman, I was encouraged that I think one of the things you suggested at the last meeting was that staff describe the sort of overall statewide objectives that we're trying to accomplish here with near-term strategies. So let me suggest 4 that I think frame this in a way that links together actions and strategies, so we're not compartmentalizing them into this is ecosystem, this is water supply reliability, this is levees, this is delta protection, but in a way that can align people so that they're broader objectives, but they also can lead to actual performance measure. So the first is improving through delta conveyance. And that is not just a water supply reliability thing. It would incorporate the fish protection actions, et cetera. So it's both ecosystem and water supply reliability. But a near-term objective would be to improve the through delta conveyance capacity and ecosystem protection of our existing system. The second would be to divert more water in wet years and less in dry years. I think as a more acceptable way to talk about reducing reliance and improving water supply reliability and protecting the ecosystem. The third would be invest in delta economic protection and development. So picking up on some of the earlier comments about how do we protect and enhance the delta, and I think that's a commitment to economic development in the delta. That might also include some protection strategies like levees. And then the last one is initiate and accelerate adaptive management. So that can incorporate, obviously, the ecosystem restoration activities, but can also incorporate the science, this Delta Science Program, other science programs, efforts we're trying to incorporate. So those could be a start on 4 overall outcomes for the near-term strategies that would then tier down into the specific strategies I've identified, but also tier down into measurable performance metrics, both outcome metrics and implementation metrics that we could use to see how we're doing.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.